We have 6 people who signed in for this, but I also don't know if anybody came in late that would like to also speak.
What will you discuss?
This is anything you want to discuss.
The helicopter pad.
Would you like to speak?
Yes.
Well, I'll tell you what. First of all, let's get our first speaker up there, and this is Deja Vu. George Winter is our first speaker.
One more time and I'll be brief. In my 17 years of working for the town, one of the projects that I was assigned to work on in my everyday calls and complaints was someone was landing a helicopter down in our subdivision. Really, okay, well, you go down and you take a look at it, and, you know, sure enough, there's a helicopter down the Sundance Trail property, and there's on a pad too, so that's how it kind of all started. And the town took a good look at it, and Charlie and I, we worked on this for quite a long time, on the should it be there, should it not be there, and it came out that we felt that it shouldn't be there. In actual fact, my personal opinion always was that it was going to be any place in the town of Webster, and should have been out in a commercial area at the east end of town where nobody lives and nobody cares. A commercial businesses area, something like that. But in a residential neighborhood, boy, I'll tell you, my phone just rang off the hook constantly from the Sundance area and other areas of the town. People were just concerned about it. Then it migrated down to DeWitt Road. So, you know, I guess that's back where you are. You've opened Pandora's box, and now you're going to have to figure out what to do with it. So, all I can say is good luck to you. Thank you.
Thanks, George. Our next speaker tonight is Harold Brady. Sandy?
Yep. It's coming.
I gotta say, this meeting tonight comes as a surprise to me, mainly because I never heard about it until the Webster Herald today. And to put an airport in the town of Webster should be published, well published. What we're talking about here is not a single helipad. We're talking about a gentleman who wants to start an airport. And we're going to have a lot of helicopters, because the city of Rochester, the municipal airport, don't want them. They're very restricted on how they can fly in and out of the airport. And tonight, the board should consider setting some restrictions on how they're going to fly in and out of the airport. And there's not much more I could say, other than, remember, it's a residential area. You got a 1,000-pound airplane. It takes 1,002 pounds to lift it. So the thrust from that airplane will rattle a train in their cabin. I know from 2007, when we used to fly around there. And I can tell you right now, of course, I won't be around, so it won't matter. I'm just saying that you should set parameters on this whole thing before you just give Mr. Cassini a permit to go crazy. Thank you.
Thank you, Harold. Next up is Al Siggins.
Good evening, town board. This is my 6th presentation on this in the last 19 years, and it's in reference to the helicopter acquisition. John Kashani is the quote. I'm not going to tell you about safety. I'm not going to tell you about noise. I'm not going to tell you about population density, because you've heard it many times already. You rescinded a law that was valid for a long period of time that kept this problem in check, quite honestly. A respected jurist, Judge David Larimer, quotes, "It would be self-evident that prohibiting aircraft from taking off and landing within the town of Webster, a heavily populated suburb, is rationally related to the goals of reducing noise and protect the safety of the residents of the town of Webster." I do want to continue. Mr. Kashani's attorney had 4 questions he brought up at the town board workshop on September 14th last year. First one is, Webster is the only town in Monroe County to have this kind of prohibition to aircraft. That is correct, and it's because the other 17 towns don't need to have one. 893 DeWitt Road is a unique property. He doesn't have to fly over anybody else's property. That is true, but the problem is he does. John does what John wants to do. John parks his truck in front of your house, John takes pictures of your house, and John hovers over your house, right there up in the air, and I can watch it. Okay? No one else has challenged the 17-year ordinance. It doesn't affect anybody else. And John's attorney presented photos showing 3 sides of the property. The reason you didn't see the photos on the 4th side is the hundreds of homes that are along DeWitt Road, the subdivisions, Bay Road, Colorado Drive, Duran, etc. Should the application be approved? No. Currently, you have control. Once you lose that or authorize permission for him to take off and land off of DeWitt Road, he's going to do what he wants to do. There's no prohibition for anybody else flying into this helipad if it is allowed to take place. And quite frankly, if you approve this, you're approving one man's hobby over the safety of all the residents in the northwest part of the town. I request you deny the application, and hopefully we won't be back for another presentation in the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Al. Next up is Joan Schlegel.
Did you have to? I can't hear us.
I'm Joan Schlegel. I'm actually here representing my husband who couldn't be here tonight. I'm representing both of us. I'll give you a copy of the remarks. And attached to the remarks, I have also included a copy of an information sheet from the FAA in which they state that if this is passed, the helicopter should operate in a manner to minimize noise, vehicular traffic around the site controlled, etc. And one of my biggest concerns has always been the traffic on the Bay Bridge, and I'm not sure how anyone is going to be able to control that traffic, but they sure are going to be very aware of the helicopter landing in such an unusual place. Now, these are the remarks that I've brought. In reading of this, my husband put most of this together. In reading the Webster Herald on a regular basis, I've noticed in the past several months that requests for special options have been granted by either the zoning board or the town board to allow requests within the R2 or R3 zoned areas of the town. It seems that there have been a number of accessory structures granted, and in some cases, requests to grant variance changes, and special use permits. Our neighborhood group, BASIC, has had to oppose such requests for several years that would change the nature of such a large R2 and R3 neighborhood, as designed and proposed in the zoning maps of our town. Our organization spent many months opposing 2 business ventures that were within our West Webster zoned area, and this board sided with us in those 2 cases to deny the business applications. Now we must spend more energy opposing Mr. Kashani's heliport application, which is yet another business venture that doesn't fit into the zoning plan that the Webster Planning Committee has designed for West Webster. The taking off and landing at this site at the DeWitt Road location has many of us neighbors living within a block of this heliport upset and on edge, emotionally distraught, and very concerned about our safety. Many of us feel that this landing area, being as close to so many of the houses tightly surrounding this site, is totally an unsafe place to have such an operation, simply because of the myriad of things that can happen and create unsafe situations. History of helicopter oddities, we call them, have occurred in the United States on several occasions where the most talented pilots have lost control of their transport, with situations occurring that they had never expected, but we were unavoidably and unable to correct. No flight is ever without the possibility of such an incident happening. Many of us here are more than just concerned. We have this designated zoning map in our town for a reason, but to weave through this map a host of other than zoning sends out a loud message that such maps are indeed unnecessary. Why have them in the first place if there's no sense of permanency, especially within the R2 or R3 housing, in order to prevent an influx of business ventures? Many of those in our residential area say no way to Mr. Kashani's request. There are a handful of some residents who don't object or don't care about it. What else could be permitted within this property if there is an approval? Fuel, equipment, an accessory structure, or business use? In closing, it's my understanding that each of you, board members, took an oath to protect the health and safety of all Webster residents. A positive vote from you is in direct conflict with this oath. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jan Lenzy, is that
Yep.
correct? Is that correct?
Yes, you did. You know the last name, didn't you? Is it okay?
I'm here in regards to the helicopter. Okay, I live at 237 Shorewood Drive, and I can't say it's John Kashani's helicopter, but we have a blue and white helicopter that continues to go over very close to our homes. So that is a concern. I apologize, the other 3 neighbors could not come with me because of short notice. We saw it in Webster Herald today, and we did not have time to get together. But it is a concern of several neighbors, and there were 3 of us that were standing in the road, and the helicopter circled over us, the blue and white one, 3 times. And we felt that we were very harassed by this. I've talked to a friend who is in the Air Force, and he said that the helicopter crashes can happen, whether it's failure of the vehicle or whatever. And he felt it was very dangerous to have a helicopter landing in a residential area. My other question is, if it is the helicopter that's on DeWitt Road, why are they passing over our neighborhood to go home or to leave? I'm not real well prepared because this is, short notice again. But we have severe concerns. The law's been in practice now for how many years? And now suddenly we want to change it. The residents of Shorewood and Birch Lane would like you to know this will not make us happy. We're very upset. Thank you.
Next up is Jared Hurd.
Don't shake your head at me. Pardon? We got some
Good
cups
evening.
here.
Before I begin, I guess I just had one question in regard to the pending application, whether or not I have an opportunity to speak on behalf of the applicant before the board votes on it. Other than
I beg your pardon?
excuse me?
Say that again, Jared?
Sure, I would just want to confirm if I'm going to have an opportunity to speak on behalf of the applicant before you vote.
Number 13?
Correct.
No.
Okay, then I'll use my time now to address the board, so thank you for that. I don't want to belabor this, we've been before the board many times now. Keep hearing the same thing over and over again with regard to health, safety, and well-being of the residents. As this board is well aware, we've gone through the process, both through the FAA, both through New York State Department of Transportation. We've had the experts in this field go through, vet this, approve this, both come back and positively say that they approve this heliport for all purposes, which is why we're now before this board. Again, it's an onerous process, we've gone through, nobody else has gone through. Couple of things I just want to touch on in hearing some of the comments from the audience. One, the last speaker, I didn't catch her last name, but she mentioned the blue and white helicopter. Anyone that knows John knows his helicopter is bright red. It is clearly not his helicopter. In fact, her comments do nothing more than assist my client's application before the board, because the reality of it is any helicopter can fly over the town of Webster at any time. That is the reality of it. The town has no ability, no jurisdiction to in any way govern airspace. We all know that. We've gone over that many, many times. It's not a business venture, as we know. It is a request by the applicant to use a recreational vehicle, which is frankly no different than using a four-wheeler, although people want to make it sound like helicopters are falling out of the sky on a regular basis. That's just not the reality of the situation, and that is established. So unless the board has any questions for me, I'm going to rest solely upon our materials, which are facts, which have been vetted by experts and not by comments from individuals that perhaps don't have the necessary credentials.
And Jared, I think I have a question.
Absolutely.
Since I already said you're not coming up in an hour when we get to number 13, I want to make sure you get a chance to answer stuff. If you have questions. I have actually two questions. I couldn't find the FAA approval and or the New York State Department of Transportation Aviation, the flight pattern that is mandated. I've heard it said that from the DeWitt property, he would take off and go over the bay, and he would come in over the bay and come to land. I don't see that.
There is no mandated flight pattern from the FAA or New York State. So there is no, the FAA looks at it and approves it based upon what they look into it, obviously, look at where you want to put it and go, okay, this is a safe place to fly. New York State does the same thing. They come out, they look at it, and if they had issues or concerns, then they could, if they wanted to, make specific mandates. They haven't. So as part of our proposal to the town, we have mentioned that 893 DeWitt is a very unique parcel. There's no other parcel like that in town of Webster, and he could, Mr. Kashani could take off and land without ostensibly going over anyone else's property.
Yes,
He could do
I
it,
agree.
but there
I
is
just
no
thought it was
mandated somewhere.
One of the other three.
No.
New York General Business Law 249, very clear. Here's how you get an approved heliport. FAA first.
Correct.
That's tantamount, that's a meat grinder.
Yes.
There probably isn't too many properties around here to get that. Then you gotta get the New York State Department of Transportation, Aviation Division.
Correct.
Another meat grinder. And then if you get through those two, you end up in front of a county board.
Yes.
So like I said, I was just looking, I just assumed, and you know what happens when you assume, that a flight pattern was, mandated, but you're saying it's not, at least by those two entities.
Correct. By the experts who looked at it, they determined that one wasn't necessary.
Right. And the other question I had was, I didn't see anything that was overtly in those approvals that you have to be hovering, whatever. Like you said, you can fly, anybody can fly a helicopter in Webster.
Yes.
Anybody. What is the law? I couldn't see it of how low they can get to a building and or a residential neighborhood. Like how low?
Yeah. I don't know the answer to that, frankly. And the reality, keep in mind that the FAA governs that. And so if there's a pilot, it's a licensed pilot that is not complying with the regulations imposed by the FAA, because they're the ones who regulate flight, then a complaint can be made and that pilot can lose its license.
Okay. Just, like I said, does any of the town board members have any other questions for Jared?
No, I think you don't.
No question, but I comment.
Because you asked the question about how low a plane can fly.
I asked a helicopter.
Helicopter, how a helicopter can fly, sorry. That was part of the inquiry I did when this was before the board earlier this year. And if a commercial helicopter pilot was flying over power lines to check power lines, they can literally be 100 feet or 200 feet flying over a house, checking power lines. So typically, you wouldn't see that for a private use or recreational use, but for commercial use, if you have a company who's contracted to inspect power lines, they can legally fly that low.
Yeah. And that's nice, but this isn't a commercial helicopter, so thank you. And very similar to what happened when we voted the law out on February 22nd. You know that the board talked for 52 minutes prior to that vote. So maybe when we get to number 13 tonight, I'll be interested. We always say, any questions, comments by the board before we vote on a resolution? Hang around, because you'll see there's a lot of conversation that happens on the other 12 resolutions before number 13 tonight. So I'll give you a rhythm of how this works. But thank you, Jerry.
Thank you.
And last, and I did not, Sally, I can't believe I did not, it's been a long time. How are you? Good to see you. You are lucky number 7. You're the speaker that is last up on this.
I must say, and I'm a bit embarrassed to say, this is the first town board meeting I've attended ever, and I've lived in Webster a long time. But as I was finishing dinner, I pulled up the Herald, and I saw this meeting advertised. And I've heard people speak very well and succinctly about the issue of the helicopter pad, so thank you all, because I am not prepared. I've just come because I felt I had to say something. I live not that far from DeWitt Road, quite close to the bay, and I am concerned about a helicopter pad in a neighborhood, in a residential area. I don't know how many of you have ridden in a helicopter or been near one when it takes off and lands. It's loud, really loud. In fact, we were on one at one time. The first time I was on, we had our young son. He cried because it was so loud. So I'm quite concerned about this issue. I haven't followed it nearly as well as many of you have. But I hope it is not approved in that residential neighborhood or any residential neighborhood within Webster. Thank you.
Thank you, Sally. Okay, I don't know if I have my dean or my colleague here, but is there anybody else that came in late or would like to speak on this?
I'd like to speak, sir.
Let's go. And if you didn't sign in, can you clearly give your
Chris
name?
Belt.
Pardon?
Chris Belt. B-E-L-T.
Chris
Yep.
Belt, and your address?
306 Lenora Lane. 306 Lenora Lane.
306 Lenora Lane.
Yes.
Okay, the podium is yours.
Yeah, I'm just, I hear all these concerns over here about things that are very invalid. First of all, this board has no jurisdiction over any aircraft in the air. So anything that's flying here, you have no say. This board has no say over it. When the helicopter comes in, he's got 35 acres of land to come in. And
Hey,
land.
Chris, would you mind addressing the board?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you, I
Sorry.
appreciate it very much.
No, I apologize. So he has 35 acres of land. That aircraft is still in FAA authority when he's 1 inch off the ground. From 1 inch to when it touches down, it's still FAA jurisdiction. It has nothing to do with any of these people over here who have concerns. I feel like they're over here saying, well, you can't fly because you can crash. Well, I fly Delta all the time, and my final approach is over Webster. So are you going to be going to, the FAA and telling Delta that, I can't fly, I can't land here anymore because you're concerned of an aircraft? Second point I'd like to make is, they're talking about noise. Have they done any due diligence about the amount of decibels that that helicopter creates? Now, if they're concerned about noise, are they gonna shut down State Route 104? Because the noise on State Route 104 is over 100 decibels. Are they gonna outlaw lawnmowers in the town? Because a gas-powered lawnmower generates 90 to 95 decibels of noise. Now, Mr. Kashani's aircraft only generates 83.7 decibels. So it's significantly less. So I don't know what they're hearing, but I think they're just, they have an emotional feeling about this and not a factual feeling. And it really should be a concern to the town that we approve and go forward with what's already been done. This gentleman made a case that he hadn't heard about, the helipad, that it's been licensed by the FAA for over 20 years. Where's he been? I mean, it's public knowledge. You can go on the FAA website and look it up. There's over 100 private heliports in the state of New York. I've looked them up. It's not uncommon. This is a unique piece of property. He's a commercial pilot. He has a license. He's controlled by the FAA. The aircraft is monitored by the FAA. These people sit and say he hovers over my house. You know what? Prove it. Because you have the ability to prove it.
How?
Call the FAA.
Okay, all right. I'm gonna stop this right now.
What's up?
I want you to step away for a second, Chris. I'll let you back. You got 2 minutes left. There will be decorum or I'll end the meeting. This is not a place where someone gets on the podium, says something that maybe you don't like, and you start pot-shotting from the crowd. Okay? That's not gonna happen. You get a chance to speak when you're here at that podium. Does everybody understand? Thank you. Keep going, Chris, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. The helicopter has a transponder on it, which the FAA monitors constantly. That's how it knows that it's within range of other aircraft. That's how other aircraft identify it. It's not like these, other aircraft, the planes that people can fly out of their backyard that the town approves, that don't have any transponders on, that are in the flight path of other commercial aircraft. But this aircraft is licensed legally, it's approved by the FAA, it's approved by the DOT, it's monitored, and its jurisdiction falls under the FAA. There's 35 acres of land to go from 1 inch of FAA jurisdiction to the ground, which once you're on the ground, has nothing to do with any neighbor anywhere, because they're nowhere in sight of that helicopter. They can't even see the helicopter when it lands on the helipad. It's behind the house, it's below grade, you can't see it. So I know they have their emotional feelings about things, but let's work with facts, not feelings. That's what we need to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. I know I thought I saw a couple more hands. Sir, if you can. And your name is?
Bill McConnell, 891 DeWitt.
Thank you, Bill.
I've lived next to John for 4 years. I've seen the helicopter come in and out numerous times. Just want to state the facts that I'm aware of. Always respectful, always goes out over the bay, away from my house, away from my property. I don't have my dishes rattling. I don't have my siding blowing off. I have an above-ground pool in my backyard. I have furniture in my backyard. Never had an issue with any noise, any wind, nothing of the sort. Quite honestly, I do get more noise from 104 going over the bridge than I do his helicopter that handful of times I've seen it in 4 years. So I don't see it as a big problem. I don't know why. If you hear that from me, it doesn't pull any more weight because I'm the one who's legit right next door.
Thank you, Bill. And then I think at least one, yes, sir. Two?
I might have to get up there from the back.
No, you didn't.
My name is John Salzgiver, S-A-U-L-S-G-I-V-E-R, 897 Clem. So I wanted to just kind of confirm what the councilwoman said about minimum safe altitudes. There's a regulation in Part 91 which covers the operations that Mr. Kashani is proposing. Part 91 covers non-commercial private aviation, doesn't apply to commercial operators. The minimum altitudes for safe flight are 1,000 feet over congested areas, 500 feet over less congested areas. And the key to that is, except for takeoff and landing. That's something to keep in mind, because you can't start at 500 feet, you have to get to 500 feet. And as far as referencing commercial operators, flying much lower than that, I live right next to substation 73 on Clem Road. And many times a year, they inspect those power lines that come in and out of that transformer. There's power lines east and west, and there's a line that goes south from that transformer. And they fly up and down the power lines inspecting them. It's an important thing that they have to do to keep the lights on. And those helicopters, the one that I've seen has been blue, or blue and white. It's probably a Bell Jet Ranger, which is a pretty common helicopter. But it's not Mr. Kashani's helicopter. Do you have any questions for me?
No, I looked up 91.119 and it confirms the 500.
Yeah.
500 level
Yeah.
you're speaking about, so yeah, I appreciate it.
Thank you, John.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Going.
Yeah.
Kyle Malone, 889 DeWitt Road. Kyle,
Kyle,
K-I-L-E,
sorry,
yep,
Kyle
no problem.
Malone. And the address again?
889 DeWitt Road. So I did send a letter to Mr. Flaherty through an email yesterday. But honestly, I'm going to even keep it shorter than that letter. I live at 889, which is 2 houses down from where John is. I'm one next to Bill. So Bill being the closest and me being the next closest, essentially my backyard is John's backyard. And I can say I have never had any problems with John flying the helicopter in, landing it, taking off. I have 0 concerns over it, 0 problems with it. I do not feel unsafe in any way, shape, or form. And like I said, I think shit holds in pretty solid water. Also, I think 3 years ago or whenever we had this, we had, I think, 15 other people that own properties along DeWitt that had the same feeling as me. And we signed something saying that. So just want to bring that up. I do know that some people in the neighborhood, or further not in the neighborhood maybe, have the concerns, but the people that are the closest have both gotten up and said that they're not concerned about this. So that's all I really have to say.
Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you very much.
And Kyle, I did receive the letter.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. Did I see the other hands? I do see another hand going up. Go right ahead.
My name's John Musson, 658 Treasure Circle.
And John, how did you say that last name again?
Musson, M-U-S-S-O-N.
M-U-S-S-O-N, and Treasure Circle?
Yes, sir.
658.
658.
Thank you.
You're welcome. What I would like to do, I think the facts ultimately speak for themselves, and I trust that you folks will, you folks will see the facts and make the right decision. I respect the viewpoints of everybody in the room. I understand one gentleman has presented 6 times, and you gotta admire his tenacity. But what I want to speak to is, like I said, I don't have to tell you any more facts. That's been presented ad nauseum. I want to talk about John's character because these folks are presenting him as if he wears devil horns and he's there to fly his helicopter over their house and torment them. For one, you know, gentleman who's been up here 6 times, if he put his passion into something else, like John put his passion into getting a helicopter license, you know, maybe he could achieve something of the sort. It takes a tremendous amount of passion and a tremendous amount of work to do something like that. And somebody like John wouldn't risk that license and everything that it took to do that. I know people with way less than John, and you know, he's way too humble to say this, so I'll say it. People with way less than John who flaunt way more, show off way more. This man just wants to enjoy his land, enjoy his life, and enjoy the things that he has. And I think people should just kind of live and let live. That's kind of my take on it. If all the people closest to his house don't care, why do people miles away care? It's not affecting them. It's really not. And I've been around this helicopter many times, you know, and forgive me if this is out of decorum, but everything they're saying it's a lie. It's not true. It's just not. It's not shaking houses. It doesn't shake Kyle's house. It doesn't shake Bill's house. They're 50 yards away. How is it shaking the guy's house up the street? I mean, it's just not. It's not factual. It's exaggerated, and it's fear mongering. And that's my take on it. And you know, I'm not here to disrespect anybody. You know, facts are the facts, and I just want to defend this man's character because he's done a lot for me. He's done a lot for many, many people, and I don't like hearing people, you know, stand up here and try to assassinate his character. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, John.